to Talking Supply Chain. In each episode, top supply chain industry professionals and the nation's top thought leaders join host Brian Strait and share their unique insights to help supply chain managers stay one step ahead of their competition. This is Talking Supply Chain. Welcome to another episode of Talking Supply Chain. I'm your host, Brian Strait. Today, we're taking a deep dive into one of the biggest questions facing supply chain leaders. How do you make the right automation decisions at a time of rising labor costs, workforce shortages, and geopolitical uncertainty? To help us break this down today, we're joined by two executives from TMX Transform, a global supply chain consultancy known for helping companies design, optimize, and implement end-to-end supply chain transformations. With us today are Jeff Bonino, President of North America, and Nick DeClercq, Senior Director and hands-on leader in warehouse and automation design. Welcome to you both. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Great to
Thanks,
be here.
Brian.
We're going to get into a number of topics today. We're going to explore some of these themes, such as why automation feasibility must come before big capital investments, big capital commitments, I should say. Tools like digital twins and AI-driven simulation and how that helps you shape better decisions. And a little bit, I think, about some insights on how to mitigate wage inflation, tariffs, geopolitical risk, a lot of the risks that we're facing out there. Before we get into those topics and more, though, I want to give each of you a chance to kind of talk a little bit about yourselves and TMX Transform. So, Jeff, maybe we can start with you. Tell us a little bit, tell our audience a little bit about you and a little bit about who TMX Transform is and what you guys actually do.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. It's great to be here. So maybe a little bit about TMX Transform, and you said it well in the intro. We are a global supply chain consultancy based out of Melbourne, Australia, but we have global offices supporting customers across a variety of different supply chain dynamics, including network design and optimization, DC design, inclusive of automation. We help customers to find the right 3PL partner to suit their needs, all the way through to transportation, optimization, construction project management, and helping our customer find that right distribution center for their needs. I am based out of Cleveland, Ohio, and I lead the Americas for TMX. So that includes both North and South America. And my background is all in supply chain. And you'll find that with all of TMX, we are practitioners by nature. We're not groomed consultants, so to speak. So, I, like all of my peers in the business, come from industry. And most of my career has been spent in the grocery retail supply chain arena, where I was vice president of supply chain for a couple of large grocery chains.
Great. So, I mean, you've been in the field, you've been doing it. So that's great. And it's always helpful. Nick, how about you? Can you tell us a little bit about your role and what you do?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here. At my core, I'm an engineer with a background in robotics and mechatronic engineering. So, yeah, grew up building robots and all that sort of fun stuff. But over time, I realized that ultimately, these really innovative and exciting technologies have to serve a business objective.
Mm-hmm.
And so that led me to pursue various business studies and supply chain studies. And looking at it at the time, supply chain was a really exciting industry with a lot of growth and potential. So I joined supply chain and have since been working with a number of large organizations across the world to implement leading edge supply chain strategies and automation solutions. So my background is, boots on the ground. I spent many years designing and implementing automation, DCs, and various network strategies. And at TMX, I lead our supply chain function under Jeff and the business operations for North America.
Great. I'm excited to get into this today and get into some of these topics. So, Jeff, let's start with you. Want to kind of talk big picture strategy kind of thing. We are in the US here and around the globe, I'm sure. We're seeing unprecedented wage inflation going on. In the US, we have an aging workforce. So can you talk from the executive perspective how you see this, the automation feasibility component of this? Why is automation feasibility like a critical first step to get going rather than just simply like, hey, let's just jump in and go, right? I mean, can you kind of talk about that from the executive perspective?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and you hit a couple of major points there. The first is it's not just about the aging workforce; it's also shifting dynamics within the workforce, where it's just hard to find folks who want to work in a tough environment like distribution centers, especially if you're thinking about temperature controlled distribution centers. a lot of companies around the world are struggling to find, not just because of the aging population, but because it's work that folks really struggle to do. They don't want to do it. So a lot of our customers and companies around the world are looking at automation as a safeguard against what is becoming a very difficult labor market for the work that they do. And to your second question about just jumping right in, a lot of customers that I've seen and a lot of companies that I've visited throughout the world have made the decision, and they regret oftentimes the decision of jumping right into implementation. To your point,
Yeah.
we really try to avoid that with them and make sure that we are helping them understand what the right solution is for them before they spend millions of dollars, and in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars, on a solution that ultimately isn't going to solve their problem. So we take
Yeah.
great care, and it's really important to take great care to understand your current operation, your growth potential, and really find the right solution to solve your problem both today and into the future before investing millions of dollars in something that ultimately could be the wrong decision and that you regret for decades to come.
It's the modern $1 million paperweight, right?
100%. Great way to put it.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, as a follow-up to that, because you deal with the operational side of this, when we get going with a feasibility study for automation, I think a lot of companies go into this with the idea that, hey, we need to put automation in. What kind of data points do you look for? What signs do you look for from these feasibility studies that indicates that the company actually needs the automation as opposed to just thinking it needs automation?
Yeah, that's a really good one. It's really interesting when we look at the drivers behind it because, as I mentioned earlier, automation is really there to serve a business objective. So when we're looking at automation, it's not there to just be a fancy, shiny toy in the warehouse. It needs to generate value. So we look at the operation at the start, understand their operational requirements, and then we start to look at the data to understand a lot of information that helps drive the decision. So there's really four key questions that we look at. The first rule of material handling is what are you handling? Are you handling pallets? Are you handling cases? Are you handling units? Is it frozen? Is it ambient? Is it dangerous goods? Those are the sort of things that we ask in that first question from the data and the site visits. The second question is how big does it need to be? How much product do we need to hold? Are we looking at 60,000 square foot or 600,000 square foot? The third question is how fast does it need to be? So are we moving one pallet a day or 100 pallets an hour? That really drives the automation requirements. And then the fourth question is the profile. So looking at, is it case pick versus layer pick versus pallet pick, and the days, hours of operation, which really impact that automation. So through all of those four key questions, we're able to then detail which automation is best suited and the benefits for the client. Depending on the region that you're in globally, and even within the United States, the primary driver does vary. So within the States, as Jeff just discussed, one of the key ones is labor. And I'll just build on what Jeff said there. We often refer to the labor shortage as the work has the three Ds. It's dull, it's dangerous, and it's dirty. So people no longer want to do those jobs, and automation is starting to step in.
Yeah. So I think as a follow-up for that, I mean, a couple things and build off that. Companies sometimes go into these projects and say, well, we want to do automation. And so let's do a study to make sure that we're doing it correctly, right? And I think that may be wrong in some ways because you're conducting a study to determine a preconceived decision, right? So you can frame the study, I suppose, in a way to get to the answer you want. That's the easiest way. So, maybe Nick, can you kind of talk about these studies and misconceptions that companies have about doing a study like this, and what missteps can you avoid and kind of that approach and
Yeah, sure. There's a number of them. I guess one of the first ones I would touch on is that if you do a study in one site and find that optimal solution, that doesn't necessarily mean that that solution should be deployed across your network. Every warehouse is very different. There's a saying in the industry that once you've seen one warehouse, you've seen one warehouse. There are nuances and differences between every operation. So when you're doing an automation feasibility and you look at your first site, you might determine that a certain solution is the optimal solution for that warehouse. However, when you look at the next one or the third one, there might be different solutions depending on the rental rates in the region. So if we're looking at somewhere like the middle of Chicago or somewhere out in the country in Kansas, there might be a difference in rental, which drives different solutions. So that's really important to consider that the optimal solution will vary by
Mhm.
site and by region.
So you need to you can't just do one study and apply it across the board necessarily. Then in essence, that's what you're
That's
saying,
exactly
right?
right. Exactly. The capex and the benefits will vary. Different labor rates, different rental rates, different steel price indices in the regions. So it needs to be done on a case by case basis to fully understand the benefits before you step into it.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, can I ask you to jump in here on this too? Because I'm interested in that. And like I said at the beginning, and when I framed the question, I think some companies do these studies with the idea that it's going to justify the decision they've already made.
Yeah, no,
It-
it's right. And everything that Nick just mentioned, I won't reiterate, but I couldn't agree more with him. One other point that I know Nick would agree with this one as well. A mistake that we see a lot of folks make is they go to one provider. Well, yeah, so they in their mind think the customer knows in their mind what the right solution is, and they know of a provider who deals with that type of automation solution, and so they go to that provider and ask if that provider can do an assessment to see if they can help.
yeah.
Well, take a guess what the outcome of that study is. It's 100% of the time. It's of course we can help you, and yet yes, we'd be happy to do it. And what's really important is for each individual leader within those companies to realize we need to have an impartial way of measuring and determining the right solution for us. So, and this is not a sales plug for TMX. Whether it's TMX or anybody else, it's important. Find a partner who's impartial, who's knowledgeable about all of the different solutions that are out there, and who's knowledgeable about all of the different providers within those solutions, but is agnostic as to any of them, doesn't have a particular fight and stake in the fight, if you will.
Mhm.
Their only objective is to help the customer find the right solution for them. And that's really important because if you go to provider X and ask if they can help, they're going to say yes. They might not be the right solution though. And I've seen that throughout the world where just about every automation solution under the sun I've heard cursed in some form or fashion, when in reality they all are quite good at what they do. The key is getting the round peg in the round hole, finding the
Yeah.
right solution for your problem. Don't just go to one provider and ask for them to do an assessment because you're just going to get a one-sided view.
Yeah. I think that's I mean it's interesting you say that because I think that's very true. And I think that leads whether it's you guys or any other consultancy out there. I mean, there are people who say, well, I don't need to spend money with a consultancy because I know what I want to do. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right solution, right? To your point. And I think that's the value that a consultancy can bring to a project, right? To make sure that you're
100%.
getting the right solution and not just a solution
Exactly.
in this process.
And Brian, if I might jump in there, I didn't cover it in my background. I worked in sales for automation before I joined TMX. And when I was in the sales team, I won't mention the exact product name, but we had a mantra that said, shuttle is the answer. What is your question? And what we meant by that is, depending on what your problem, your warehouse, we were going to find a way to make our product work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the talking points, right? You have the talking points, and it's like, okay, if they say this, then this is the answer. If they say that, this is the
That-
answer.
That's
But either
right.
way, you're going to get to the same conclusion,
Exactly. And that
right?
leads to the point that Jeff made that sometimes it is a solution, but it is not the best solution.
Yeah. Nick, stick with you. We've seen a lot of technologies come about, digital twins being a big one, right? That a lot more companies are using now. And you've spent a lot of time working simulations and things. Can you talk about the technology that's available to you guys now and to companies now, and how that technology helped you get more predictive insights that you can generate that maybe 5 years ago you couldn't do, and how is that changing the solution and the choices that are being given?
Absolutely. And that's a really key one in the time that we have today, where simulation and digital twins are really becoming a forefront in the industry. So, Jeff made a point earlier about previously we've all seen it, anyone in industry has seen it, an automation solution that's implemented that isn't running as well as it should. And these are large capital investments, they're large scale. And what we seek to do is to help our clients minimize all the risks associated with these implementations. And so, what I often say to that is we're ensuring that we deliver on a predictable result. We want to ensure that what we promise is going to happen is actually going to happen. And simulation is an incredibly powerful tool to allow us to do that. So, what we can do is, if you're interested in pursuing automation in a particular site, we can build that automation for you in a digital environment, fully test it, run the day's operation, find out where it works really well, and importantly, where does it not work very well? Where are the issues? Where are the congestion points? And we can get a huge amount of data that we can take back to the lab, process through, and work with the supplier to improve the solution to ensure that when it's implemented in a year's time, it's going to run through peak periods and average periods and perform as expected. So simulation's a very powerful tool to ensure that we deliver on a predictable result.
Yeah. So, Jeff, from that simulation standpoint, taking it to the C-suite, right? I mean, the C-suite they have a couple of objectives. I mean, they want obviously the business to run well. They want to improve margins, but they also want to avoid major risk and they want to avoid spending money they don't need to spend, right? Because that impacts margins. So you mentioned very early on, sometimes you go out there, if you pick the wrong solution, you'll be spending tens of millions of dollars on something that doesn't really work. So can you talk about the simulation and the use of AI today as well? How is that helping the C-suite understand the investments that they're making and maybe just make them feel more comfortable in the investment they're making and the redesign that they may be undertaking in these are in different facilities?
Yeah. No, it's I think the wisest dollars that you could spend because I'm not suggesting that doing a simulation is there's no cost associated with that, but when you look at the cost avoidance and pain avoidance of making the wrong decision,
Hmm.
it's a significant investment that you want to make sure that you've got right. And by simulating it, whether it's using AI, which is I would say 2, 3 years ago was more of a buzzword, and today it's not. Today it's absolutely a reality that everybody should be thinking about in terms of how to simulate their supply chain and within their four walls. Uh, but whether you're using AI or a tried and true simulation tool, the reason why that's important to the C suite is there are a variety of what if scenarios that they have in their mind, and their board members will likely have in their mind. What if we were to make an acquisition? What if a particular segment within our portfolio of SKUs were to increase by 10 or 20% or 30%? What if our workforce were to decline by 10 to 20%? What if we were to consolidate 2 or 3 different nodes into one? What if I just was out at a trade show and I saw this particular technology and I'm curious how that would look within the four walls of our distribution center? There's all of these what ifs that board members and C suite members have in their minds. The beauty of simulation, whether it's AI enabled or not, the beauty of simulation is that you can test all of those different scenarios without making a multi-$100 million investment, or it doesn't always have to be that expensive, but even millions of dollars of investment in a solution that might not be the right one.
Yeah.
By testing different scenarios on the front end, you effectively are de-risking, to Nick's point earlier, your big decision, and you're assuring that you're making the right one and that you understand the financial implications, not just the operational implications of your decision.
Yeah. Yeah. As you say that, I remember this study, and I've referenced this in the past on other episodes of Talking Supply Chain with other people, but I think it's so relevant. And it's it was 2023, 2024 survey that some company had done of customers and in the procurement space specifically. But I think it applies across the board. And that was the procurement people that they surveyed, it was like 71%, 72% had said that they didn't want new technology. They wanted to know what to do with the technology they had, right? Because the CC kept saying, "Hey, add technology, add technology." So they were doing that, but then they had a bunch of technology, and this goes to the point of installing stuff that you don't necessarily need. and they just had all this technology at their fingertips, but they didn't really know how to use it or how to leverage it correctly. So this I think this ties into the simulation point really well too, that if you know what it is you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, if you know what the technology can do, right, you can better understand it before you make these big investments.
Correct. And again, the what if, when I say what if, it's testing a variety of different scenarios that aren't actually happening yet, but could happen.
Yeah,
That safeguards against making the wrong decision long term. But everything you just said, Brian, is 100% right.
yeah. Nick, as we talk further about the simulation, can you kind of take us through an example of where simulation modeling either changed the expected automation solution that was suggested or recommended, maybe the scope of the project, or maybe the ROI once you guys got those results from that simulation, or maybe the digital twin modeling that you did?
Sure. There's quite a couple that as you've mentioned, we've helped customers better utilize their assets that they already own with simulation, and we've also used it to help assess new investments before the final order is placed. So I'll give you an example of one. We were supporting a customer with the procurement of a very large scale piece of automation. It was multi-level in an omni-channel DC.
Mhm.
And the final two vendors both proposed great solutions, but they were quite different. They used different technologies. And so the key question that we were trying to answer at the time is between these two technologies, which is better suited to our business operation? And so we built a digital twin for each technology and we ran the day's volumes through each solution and compared the two side by side. What that allowed us to do was find all the hotspots, the areas where one solution excelled, where another struggled, and we were able to compare using data. This allowed us to make informed decisions. They weren't just decisions based on gut feel, it was actually based on hard data.
Yeah,
As a result of that, we determined that one solution was better suited to their unique business. And that's how I mentioned that it does vary between different sites. On this site, we determined that, let's call it solution A was the optimal. Then, when we looked at solution A, we made a couple of changes. We realized that in some areas we had over engineered it, and in others we had under engineered it. And so we could go back, improve the design. And actually, in this case, we pulled out capital while retaining the same performance, and that improved the ROI.
yeah, yeah. All before you actually installed all this, spent the
Exactly.
money.
That
Yeah,
that's exactly right. It's replicating the physical in the digital environment. So as Jeff said, we can make all the what if questions before we invest the money and before anything's bolted to the ground. So in a lot of ways, it's a measure twice, cut once approach.
yeah. Um, Want to shift a little bit away from the simulation and in the facility, talk a little bit, some bigger picture kind of stuff. Maybe Jeff, start with you on this. Talking about kind of macroeconomic conditions and things, and a lot of companies I think look to automation for two reasons, right? I mean, there are probably others as well, I'm sure, but primarily, labor costs, obviously, they keep going up, or a lack of labor in their facility, right? So, can you talk about how the thinking about automation, specifically ROI of automation installation, has changed today for companies and how they're thinking about it now? Is it just simply to offset labor costs?
It is not simply to offset labor. It's a great question. That is always going to be one of the drivers, but it isn't just labor costs. You are correct in saying that labor costs continue to go up. And with those costs, it's making automation more and more attractive and a
Mhm.
viable solution for our customers. But there are other costs at play as well that automation will ultimately help with. For example, certain automation solutions allow you to reduce your overall footprint of a building. So you don't need to be in as big of an operating facility with certain technologies in play.
Yeah.
So the ROI thresholds, if you will, whether and every customer uses a different metric. Some look straight at as an IRR, some use a net present value, some use a break even, some use all of them, but their thresholds are still. They expect that automation will have a return, of course, as they should, but there's this we're seeing a shift a little bit in the mindset of, look, if it's close, we still may want to pursue it because it isn't just about cost offset. It is about that, but it's not just about that. There are other benefits of automation solutions beyond labor cost reduction, beyond operational cost reduction and capex. There's others such as quality improvement, reliability of your outbound shipments, service to your customers, the overall availability of labor, which you mentioned just a moment ago, Brian, is huge. So we have one of our customers who said, look, at the end of the day, if the ROI is close, we still want to do it. And the reason for that is even though uh, today we barely have enough labor to do the work, we know that 10 years from now we won't. So if we just looked at this straight dollars and cents, we might be making a foolish long-term decision if it doesn't quite hit our threshold for a return. So, it is return, but it's also some of those underlying supply chain dynamics that are at play.
So it's not necessarily the way it maybe was 5, 10 years ago. Simply, it's like we just need to reduce costs with it
Correct.
by
It's
doing it.
that's always going to be there, Brian. To your point, I mean, if it doesn't pencil at all, or we can't get even close to it penciling, I'm not suggesting that customers are going to make the decision to automate. But if it's close, I would say some of those thresholds are shifting a little bit because of those other dynamics that I mentioned.
Yeah. Um, Nick, I want to pick up on the labor component of this. I think there's probably this misunderstanding in the world, certainly for people outside the industries that we deal in every day, that companies are using automation to eliminate workers. We have an aging workforce. We have shortages in some areas as well. Can you talk about how companies view automation in relation to their workforce? Are they redeploying workers? Is it simply about eliminating workers and reducing costs? I mean, what's that look like beyond the ground reality of that?
Sure. So it's a combination of a few factors. The first thing is, and Jeff was just talking about some of those macroeconomic factors that are affecting automation. And certainly historically, the primary has been labor costs and then the secondary land costs. But what we're starting to also see in the States now, which is a dynamic that we see in a lot of countries like India, where there's very high population density, is automation is required just to manage your volume that you need to handle. If you can imagine e-commerce growing, eventually, you have operators managing the manual picking of those products. But when you start getting to think Amazon scale, large volumes going through, you simply have to automate because manual workers cannot keep up. So in those cases, automation is actually creating jobs because what it's doing is it's enabling people to leverage their efforts across a higher volume, which enables the company to scale. So once you get to high volumes, you need to automate to keep growing as a business and create jobs. The other one is we talked about the three Ds, the jobs that are dull, dangerous, and dirty. Those are jobs that people don't want to do anymore. And as Jeff said as well, there are cases where they simply cannot get people to do the work, and that's happening across the states today. And so they have to automate as a stay in business decision more than a financial decision, if that makes sense. So there are
Yeah.
a few factors that come into play, but ultimately automation is there to replace jobs that people don't want to do, create new jobs, and allow people to cross skill, cross train. So what I mean by that is supervisors who used to supervise a team of people are now supervising a team of people and a big automation solution.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's something I think people inside the industry understand that. I don't know that people outside,
Hmm.
supply chain understand that, right? I mean, I think the general public, just speaking in general, right? The general public looks at automation in anything and says, well, it's about eliminating jobs. Um,
Yeah,
but
it is. And I know AI is the talk of the town at the moment that's going to eliminate jobs. But the main function there is it's going to help people be more efficient at their jobs so that you
yeah,
can do more with less.
yeah.
And maybe Brian, if you don't mind, I just one more point on that. It's buzzing in my ears, and I feel like I've got to get it out. Everything that was just said is 100% true. There's one other thing that a lot of our customers are thinking about, especially our retail customers, but it really works for CPG and manufacturers as well. They want to keep their costs as low as they possibly can, whether it's the retail price to the customer or to the end consumer, or their cost to their immediate customer.
Mhm.
And in so doing, uh, automation is an enabler to make that happen. It obviously it achieves all the consistencies and quality improvements that we spoke about, but it's also a way to lower your cost so that you can continue to delight your customer. And a lot of our customers view it that way, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. And I had, I've had a couple of conversations with executives, and one of the themes that I kind of get is that if you don't embrace automation, then you will be displaced. If you embrace automation, then there will be a role for you
Yeah,
going forward.
that's a good way to put it. I know automation scares a lot of folks and they view it as, we're going to turn the whole world into robots. But at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is be as cost effective and as quality conscious for their customers.
Yeah.
So it's less about big bad automation taking jobs away. It's more about how can I continue to delight my customer, and think about yourself as a shopper in a retail store. Of course, you want better quality, you want faster product to the shelf, and you want a lower price. Automation is a way of getting that to you.
Yeah. Um, Jeff, I want to ask you, we can't have conversations about these things, I don't think, but necessarily about without bringing up geopolitics in some way. Obviously, we're in an environment today where we have tariffs coming and going. We have a lot of trade volatility going around the world. A lot of geopolitical disruptions. We've got wars. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on that businesses need to be aware of. What I want to do is ask you, though, can you put those kind of things in context with an automation feasibility study? Are these studies, are they able to incorporate these kind of external factors to help companies understand how to build resilience or offset cost pressures that may be taking place because of things like tariffs and stuff? Is that part of the equation here?
100%. And what it is you remember the what if scenarios that I mentioned a few moments ago that Nick added a lot of color on. I can't say that we have a crystal ball as to what. I know Nick's probably working on one behind the scenes, but we don't have a crystal ball to say exactly what's going to happen between warring nations, or what the tariffs are going to look like 4 months from now or 6 months from now. We don't know the answer to that, and I don't know anybody who does. However, we can assume things and we can test different scenarios. So if tariffs were to continue or if they were to drop, we can test that and what if it, if you will, against a variety of different scenarios
Mhm.
to ultimately get you to the right solution. And we don't go behind when we're engaged with a customer. We don't just walk away for 2 or 3 months and sit behind a black curtain and then a poof of smoke comes out and we give you the answer. It's a very collaborative approach where we talk through, what do you think is going to happen with pricing? What do you think is going to happen with tariffs? And the answer, nobody knows, but like, well, what if it goes up 10%? How about 20%? What about 40%? At what point do we break? At what point does it make sense? And you test those different scenarios, and then collectively you make the best decision about what you and the customer think those geopolitical factors are going to be. I don't know, Nick, anything you want to add to that? I know you probably are working on a crystal ball. Anything else you want to add?
I wish I was, yeah. I think that, this far in the conversation, we've covered a lot of operational and technical, and now we're getting into the commercial side. So it's probably worth touching on those lenses. So, Brian, when we look at an automation feasibility, we're looking at it through four lenses. The first is the operational, to say, what does your operation actually need? And this goes back to the conversation about not just putting a shiny object in for fun. It has to have a business objective. The second is the technical, which we've talked about in terms of all the different types of technologies. Then there's the commercial, and that's what we're really getting onto now. And Jeff talked about a lot of the sensitivities that we look at there. Once we get to the commercial side and we're looking at the financial aspects, we do play in a lot of scenarios on tariffs, inflation, hurdle rates, and all sorts of different financial parameters. So when we do determine that ROI or net present value, we do it through a number of scenarios to make sure that as tariffs fluctuate, because as Jeff said, nobody can predict it, we make sure that the business case is robust enough to handle any changes and fluctuations in tariffs and steel price indices and so forth.
Yeah. Does that include looking at moving functions maybe outside of the US or to Mexico, or deciding whether it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense to move it, but it does make sense to redesign the entire process.
Absolutely. And I'll hand over to Jeff in a second on this one. But when we that lends itself more towards a network strategy than an
Hmm.
automation feasibility in a particular site. When we're looking at a network strategy in terms of shifting assets in different geolocations or moving volume flows, what we essentially do is build an end-to-end digital twin of the supply chain. So rather than a digital twin of a piece of automation, this is of the supply chain from raw goods, manufacturing, work in progress, finished goods, flowing them between borders and different states, as an example. When we flow it, if we work on an example of a manufacturing site in Mexico versus the United States, and we flow it between the border, we can apply various tariffs and charges. And then if we relocate that asset, we can then remove those charges. So that is something that we do in depth in our network strategies.
Yeah.
And
Jeff, yeah.
I don't have a whole lot. I mean, I can reiterate everything that Nick just said, but I'm not sure I could say it any better than he just did. But I will say this. Um, a good percentage of our customers, both in the Americas and globally, are thinking about it exactly how Nick just described. So, uh, yes, we have plenty of customers who are interested in automation, and it's been hot for the last decade, and it's getting hotter.
Yeah.
But we also have a lot of customers who are trying to determine what their right supply chain model looks like. Should they offshore? Should they consolidate facilities? And when you do consolidate facilities or you look to a new operation in another part of the country, those are great times to assess automation for whatever that new facility would look like. So you could see how those two things play into one another.
Yeah. So, I mean, it does sound a little bit like Nick is working on a crystal ball, perhaps, and just doesn't want to tell us he is yet.
I've found over the last several years, Nick's working on. He's got lots of things cooking behind the scenes, and then he just sees surprise. Christmas time, you never know. He might come up with something in the next couple of weeks to delight not just our customers but me. I wouldn't put it
So,
past him.
yeah, so let's tap into that quote unquote crystal ball that Nick has, and let me ask you guys both one final question, kind of looking forward here, and that is, what do you see as the next major shift in supply chain automation decision making? Is it the maturity of AI and the use of it? Is it better cost modeling and simulation modeling, labor, geopolitical? I mean, what do you guys see out there changing the equation right now?
Sure, I'll jump into that one first, Brian. It's a really exciting question, and yeah, look, there are a few things happening behind the scenes that I unfortunately can't share today. Maybe next time we catch up, I'll give some more insights into the crystal ball. But if we look historically speaking, robots excelled at tasks that humans struggled with. So, for example, very large numerical calculations, big data, a robot can calculate and work with massive amounts of data that humans can't, and also doing repetitive movements with precision. And you've seen this in robotics in automotive manufacturing, the robots that swing around the various body panels and weld them, as an example. However, humans excel at handling complex, repetitive tasks that are highly dexterous. So, for example, I can pick up my apple here, spin it around, and put it back down. That's something that a robot has really struggled with historically because of the number of variables and complexity of a highly dexterous movement like that. So, what you've seen in warehousing and supply chain is automation has typically been implemented for those repetitive tasks, moving a pallet in and out of racking, as an example. And the final frontier being case picking, unit picking, and so forth has been somewhat more difficult to fully automate. There are some solutions out there today, but it's not a complete solution. And you may have seen this is starting to change very quickly. There are a number of humanoids that are now entering the industry, and they're starting to pick cases and pick units, and that's because of AI and machine vision. So very soon, I think there's going to be a massive shift in warehouse automation from these very large scale automation solutions that take up the whole building that we're very used to today towards implementing humanoids and lighter forms of automation that allow us to handle these really complex movements with ease.
Yeah. Uh, Jeff, I don't know if you have a crystal ball or you're working on one, but do you have any?
I'm
Forward-looking
certainly.
thoughts?
I do not have one. I'm also not working on one, but I'm hoping that Nick is going to surprise us one of these days. But I do have some thoughts on this. Obviously, I don't want to reiterate everything that Nick just said. I couldn't agree more. I might take a little bit of a different slant on it and talk about AI just for a moment, especially around simulation and digital twin. There's no question that there's massive power in creating a digital twin and simulating a variety of different what if scenarios. We talked about that a
Mhm.
lot over the course of the last half an hour or so. Uh, AI is going to continue to mature and evolve, and what that will allow us to do is get to some of those what if scenario solution options faster.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to get to run a scenario and it takes a couple of weeks. It's another thing for it to take a couple of days. I don't know if it is necessary for it to be done in 2 seconds, but AI will allow us to continue to get quicker with those different scenarios and be able to do more faster. So we're very excited. We are investing heavily in AI. I think anybody who isn't is missing the boat. But at the end of the day, the quality of the outcome, we want to be 100% sure that we can stand behind the outcome of the AI enabled simulation and digital twin technologies. But the future is being able to do more of it faster.
Yeah. It's it's almost to me, I mean, the old business mantra, right, of innovate fast and fail fast, or whatever that saying is, right? But we're getting to the point where we're going to be eliminating that fail fast, right? Because we're going to fail before we ever actually implement it.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jeff, Nick, thank you. Great discussion today. Appreciate it. For listeners that maybe want to get in touch with TMX Transform, maybe have their own analysis done, or just explore some of these topics with you guys, what is the best way for them to do so?
Reach right directly out to either Nick or myself, and we have a team ready to help. My name again, Jeff Bornino, and Nick DeClerc. Jeff.Bornino, Bornino at tmxtransform.com. And Nick DeClerc, just straight at Nick.DeClerc, DeKlerk at tmxtransform.com. We'd be happy to help.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate the time for the both of you today.
Thank you for your time. And
Thank
Thanks.
you. We are out of time. I want to thank my guests today, Jeff Bonino and Nick DeClerc of TMX Transform, and of course, all of you who've taken time out of your day to listen to us today. New episodes of Talking Supply Chain drop on Thursdays. You can find them on scmr.com or wherever you get your podcasts, so be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, this is Brian Straight, and thank you for listening. Talking Supply Chain is produced by Supply Chain Management Review and Peerless Media. You can find it on scmr.com, supplychain247.com, iTunes, Google Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcasts. For more information on this topic or to sign up for our weekly newsletter, a print or a digital subscription to our publication, visit scmr.com. We hope you will join us for our next episode. For Supply Chain Management Review, I'm Brian Straight, and thank you for listening.